Hey there, you have found another episode of the Webinar Talk Show. My name is Tom Singer.
And I'm Eliz Green. This is such a pleasure to talk to very smart people. Something you say, Tom, all the time, that we should be talking to smart people every day. But on Mondays and Wednesdays at 11 a.m., we get to talk to very smart people who are part of the meetings industry, like we are. We have somebody really cool to talk to today.
Yeah, I'm really excited because we have John Kazarian, and I interviewed him last week for my own podcast that is called Making Waves at Sea Level,
Mm-hmm.
because he has an event technology company that is shaking things up in this world of online meetings. And as we make the transition not too far out to hybrid meetings and back to in
Right.
person, John's company is doing some really cool things, and they are making waves in the event business. So I wanted to bring him
Mm.
here to be able to talk about what they're doing and how they communicate their value to meeting planners and companies that are hosting events. So, John Kazarian, welcome to the Webinar Talk Show.
Yeah,
Yay!
thanks for having me on. Good to see you again.
Oh, no, great to see you. So, John, there are a lot of things. When we say event technology, in the
Mm.
past year, that word has just come to mean a billion different things. Can you tell us a little bit about Accel Events and where you are sort of carved out under that umbrella of event technology?
Yeah, definitely. So within the realm of event technology, you've got the smaller scale meetups where Zoom is a great fit for day-to-day interactions. But on the other end of the spectrum, you've got where we fall, which is larger format, trade shows, conferences, an opportunity to bring a whole bunch of people together at once. And the event itself is more than just a singular stream. It is often multiple tracks of content where people also have opportunities to network amongst each
Mm-hmm.
other and also interact with exhibitors and sponsors during the event.
So this is going to be fun because Eliz and I, because we serve as MCs for corporate and association events, we have this unnatural love affair with event technology, especially platforms, because there are so many of them out there. So when did you found Accel Events? I know that it was started before the pandemic, but your growth since last March has
Mm.
been exponential. So let's talk a little bit about the history.
Yeah, so we actually launched the business back in 2015, and it was actually the result of a fundraiser that we were hosting
Mm.
in Boston. And frankly, there just weren't any affordable fundraising tools out there. So we decided to build our own, got great feedback on that. And over time, we continued to evolve the platform, started to focus more heavily on the ticketing space. And then obviously, February and March of 2020 changed things up quite a bit. So we
Mm-hmm.
made the decision to pivot into the virtual world, and it was clearly the right decision. Team has grown quite a bit since then. We grew from around 15 people to just about 85 today. So certainly
Wow.
seen, yeah, very tremendous growth, and in doing so, actually, without raising any outside capital as well. So it's been
Wow.
fully, truly organic growth.
So there has been a lot of meeting professionals who've pulled their hair out the past 10 months trying to find solutions
Yes.
that can help them put on events that will be able to be interactive, have that trade show element, be able to showcase
Yep.
the speakers in the right way. What are some of the things that your platform does? Where's your sweet spot?
Yeah, definitely. So at the end of the day, you got to take a step back and differentiate a webinar from an event, right? A webinar,
Mm-hmm.
again, is often that singular stream of content. It's something that can more easily be accessed for recorded content for watching it on demand later, whereas an event is all about bringing people together to interact at a point in time. Now, certainly the content created during the event can be accessed later as well, but the
Mm-hmm.
experience of the event are all of the people coming together. And it doesn't matter if they're coming together in person or if they're coming together virtually. It's that they're there and they can interact and learn from each other. So the ways that we think about our platform are creating the opportunities to make it really easy for people to do just that. Whether
Hmm.
it's within a session, the way they interact and the engagement we see there, or it's the way that they interact with each other. That could be through professional speed dating style networking activities. It could be through virtual lounges, or it could be browsing the virtual expo hall
Mm.
and getting to chat with exhibitors. And our approach to it is let's keep it as human as possible. It's not about avatars walking around some virtual trade show floor. It's about seeing real people face to face and being able to have that conversation with them.
I really like that idea of keeping that human interaction, because right now I think that's what we're all craving, is that ability to actually connect with another human being. I have seen, as Tom said, we do have an unnatural love affair with platforms. And it seems like there's a lot of them who do a good job of broadcasting content.
Yep.
That you should be able to do well. That what is tricky is that how do you get people to connect with your sponsors? Because that's what your sponsors want. They want that buying conversation, which you can't really have with an avatar. What does it feel like to, let's say, go to your trade show on your platform?
What does it feel like? Well, it obviously feels different than walking around a traditional trade show floor, right? But what we're seeing is that the type of engagement that attendees are having with exhibitors, it's much more authentic. It's people are coming because they want to learn from the exhibitor, they want to interact, they want to ask those questions, and it's not just because they want the rubber ducky on the table or the T-shirt, right? They actually want to have that genuine conversation, and the exhibitor is there. And the exhibitors that we see that have the most success on the platforms are the ones that do it. They treat it the same way that they would treat an in-person event. They make themselves available to have that conversation. And just the same way that you might be walking around a trade show floor and kind of eavesdrop on a conversation that a sales rep at a booth is having with somebody else, but you don't necessarily want to engage, you have that opportunity as an attendee here. But if you want to jump in and ask that question, you can do that. If you want to book a meeting to have a more private conversation, you can do that as well. Or you can post a question, download documents, whatever it is you want to do. And at the same time, the exhibitor is going into this conversation with more contextual information because they do know what document you downloaded, and they can have more specific feedback and help you. And frankly, it saves everybody a bunch of time.
So I
That's
love
really
that.
smart.
Yeah, that's really, really smart. And I also love the ability that you guys have created around the whole networking concept. So I built my whole career as a speaker under the moniker, the conference catalyst, because I really believe that human connection is what makes a conference great. And so many of these platforms haven't really created a way for people to connect with other people. So you clearly gave some thought, not just from the standpoint of, like Eliz said, how do we broadcast? But how do we make it two-way, and how can the people communicate with each other? So tell us a little bit about that networking component that you have.
Yeah, let me actually even take a step back from how we implement it and kind of back into the way that we think about that. If you look at the companies that have done so successfully, some of the recent IPOs, Snowflake's a great example of that, right? So much of the success they've had is because of the community that they've built. And when it comes to developing community, it is having passionate members who want to interact with each other, they want to learn from each other, who want to help each other. And when it comes to developing community, one of the best ways to do that is through events. Historically, with in-person events, it's been so cost prohibitive to host a high frequency of events and to bring that global community together because it just couldn't, right? Now what we're seeing is that companies are hosting a much higher frequency of events because for what it used to cost to serve coffee in person, you can now cover the entire expense of your platform, and you can bring people together once a month instead of once a year. And then while they're together, that's where that's where we come into play to make sure that they can interact with each other, get to know each other, learn from each other, develop skills together, ask those questions together. And that's really the opportunity for people to grow.
So I think you're onto something great, that there's that frequency that we can do in the virtual side of events that doesn't necessarily replace the in-person event, but it can augment it. It almost allows a lot of event planners to let their events go on all year because there can be more and more touch base, because relationships are built through those shared experiences. So as you reach out and talk to meeting professionals who are obviously weighing lots of different options for their events, how do you communicate the best value that Accel Events brings to a company who's putting on an event? Why Accel?
Yeah, well, to your point, hybrid is going to come back, or in-person will come back, and virtual is going to be here to complement that. In some cases, it's going to replace it, but regardless, it's going to be a complement to allow people to take that relationship they built once a year and now deepen that over time. In the way that we are communicating with our event organizers, it's a number of different aspects. So one is the ability for them to help develop that community, which is so critical to the success of a lot of businesses. Another aspect of it is providing that value to their exhibitors. And often about 90% of the events on the platform are actually free for the attendees to attend. All of the expenses are covered from the sponsors and exhibitors. So it's about providing value to those organizations that are coming. They want access to this target set of buyers. They're starting to move further away from the world of just throwing money at paid search or LinkedIn ads or Facebook ads. They want to be face-to-face with potential buyers in a hyper-targeted market and be able to have those conversations, those human-to-human conversations that really build deeper relationships. And a lot of it is having that communication or that conversation with event organizers or brands or anyone else and articulating to them that this is an opportunity to do that. And it also helps them deepen their relationships with their exhibitors because they're all providing value together. They're on the same team.
Right. And you have hit on, I think, one of the biggest struggles I'm hearing from event professionals right now is that their sponsors, their vendors are like stepping back because they don't know what the value of being in that virtual trade show or the virtual exhibit hall or getting to have those interactions because they haven't done it before. And sort of communicating what that value is going to be to those vendors or sponsors is challenging. How do you help your event planners do that?
Yeah, well, data. I mean, data is really proving value. So historically, event professionals within an organization were often looked at as a cost center. Events are so expensive to host, and an event marketer within an organization had to justify it to the CMO, who had to justify it to the CFO. And all of a sudden, the cost of hosting these events has dropped drastically. And now there's actually very clear data to prove the value of these relationships and these events that are being hosted. And that goes both for the organizer of the event, but also for the exhibitor of the event. Now you've got a record of everybody who stopped by your booth and everything they downloaded, as opposed to the person who grabbed the rubber ducky and ran, right? So there is quite a bit of more information. I think one of the areas where it is foreign is that we event professionals of people exhibiting at trade shows, they didn't have a ton of data. So it's hard to even benchmark against that. And if you go into a virtual event and you just kind of build a microsite within a platform and you don't really put a ton of effort into it, you know what, you're probably not going to get much out of it. But if you go into it with the intention of using this as an opportunity to get to meet the right buyers in this hyper-targeted market, you are going to see a tremendous amount of success as an exhibitor in a virtual event.
That makes a lot of sense. And I love data. So anytime there's data connected to something, that makes me very excited. The idea of being a vendor and saying, all right, I am actually in an environment of likely buyers, which already I'm happy about. But then if they happen to come and visit me, I know who they are and I have an ability to follow up with them. That is so different than what we've had in the past. That's extraordinarily valuable. From the other side, though, from the participant side, do you have data there as well?
Data from the participant side in terms of what?
Well, in terms of how engaged they are in the event, do you know who's participating, those sort of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got, as an event organizer, you've got all of that information. You can not just understand which attendees are the most engaged within the event, but also if you think back to, like, let's say you've got a whole bunch of breakout sessions, right? And different tracks, and you have the same speaker who comes back every year. I go and attend that event, that session, and frankly, it's not very good, right? I'm not going to go and open the 1,000-pound door behind me and let that slam and walk out. It's rude. You're gonna wait through that, right? But in the virtual world, if something's just not good, you're not going to stick around. you can leave much easier. And as the event organizer, now I can see, oh, well, for some reason, when we switch from this speaker to this speaker, after 3 minutes, there's a huge drop-off rate. And we can learn from this and understand who are the most engaging presenters we have, what are the most engaging topics, and make sure that those are the people that we're advertising when we're promoting the event in the future, but also that those are the people that we're inviting back to be speakers again. And frankly, we're canning the ones that just aren't engaging our audience. Maybe they're just not a good fit for this target.
So John, you have had the ability now over the past 10 months to work, and longer, but really over the last 10 months, to work with a lot of organizations who have done their first and maybe then subsequent conferences online. But it's been the Wild West for so many of us. What have been some of the mistakes that you have seen? They have a great platform. They choose Accel. You have a robust platform, but they still make mistakes and come up flat in some areas. I mean, the event might be a success, but what are some of the areas where planners need to really focus on to make sure they're hitting on all cylinders?
Yeah. So there's been a lot of topic around, or conversation around, the amount of effort that goes into a virtual event compared to an in-person event. And frankly, the answer is that it's just different. There's different areas that you need to focus your time and energy. But at the end of the day, if you're not creating valuable content, or valuable opportunities for people to interact with each other, then you're just not going to create an engaging event. The organizers who have put the effort and energy into making the event, and that's not just the technology. It's far beyond the technology. It is actually producing the event, whether it's the video production side, whether it's the talent that you bring in, the speakers or the MC, or having a comedian or anything like that helps to make the event engaging. Or maybe it means using a delivery service to send maybe a bottle of wine for happy hour to all of your attendees' house through Drizzly or something like that. It's coming up with the creativity that event professionals are so good at and translating that into the online world. And if event organizers do that, they have a successful event. On the technology side, whether it's through us or anything else, you obviously want to test things, right? And make sure that your speakers are using the right microphone, they have the right camera, they don't have something bad going on in the background. Whatever it is, run that test session. That's really easy. We've seen a lot of people have sort of learned that, unfortunately, the hard way. But then there's also other opportunities. Like if you know that somebody has a bad internet connection, pre-record their session, do it simulive. The attendees probably aren't going to know because the person can still be there answering questions, but you guarantee that you have that high production quality that's going to keep the attendee engaged throughout that presentation.
Well, so you brought up the point of having a master of ceremonies. So Eliz and I, obviously, this is something we do. How important do you think in the virtual world or the virtual side of a hybrid meeting, having a dedicated team or person in that role is?
It's critical. It doesn't have to be somebody outsourced. You can do it in-house. But if it makes more sense, then certainly find somebody who's an expert in that. And that's something that I know you guys certainly do, and it's something that we help our event organizers find as well. It really goes a long way in adding that level of professionalism and production quality that is going to help people keep engaged, and also to kind of keep them coming back throughout the day. There's that consistency element of having an MC who's jumping in throughout the day and sort of bringing everything back. Or in the scenario that somebody's power goes out, right? And you need somebody to step in and cover a section, because again, you want to keep people engaged throughout the day so that you don't lose their attention.
Well, and that's something we talk about regularly, that having a team of MCs that have our own expertise, we can just jump in and fill the time in a valuable way. But I wanted to go back to what you said about produce the event, which that would be like, that is music to my ears. One of our best practices is to make sure that we have a production meeting with every single presenter, because you get the opportunity to see if their internet connection is going to be okay, to really look at how best that content could be sent out into the world. It may not always be, and we would suggest very rarely be, the voice over PowerPoint sort of presentation. We can do better than that. It could be an interview. It could be a recording combined with Q&A. There's all kinds of ways to get that out there, but I couldn't agree more that really thinking about producing that event as opposed to let's just bring in some speakers and here's some entertainment and we'll just let it fly. That's too much stress.
Well, you raise another good point as well, which is the type of content itself. So when you think about something which is just a PowerPoint with a voiceover, there's an aspect of that which is not, it's not unique to an event, right? That's very easily digestible on-demand content, and it doesn't necessarily engage the audience as much as something like a panel conversation does, right? There's a formal aspect of a panel conversation where you have the opportunity through a platform, or whether it's an in-person event, to be able to ask a question to this panel of people who frankly don't come together very often and are having a really engaging conversation. And that sort of interactivity goes a really long way. And we see those events, those types of sessions, as some of the most successful sessions. And you know, again, we now have data to back up those statements that you otherwise wouldn't have or would be skewed in person.
And I'm going to a hybrid event where they have a panel discussion, and the panel is a combination of people live on stage and people coming in over the platform. And the way they've set it up, it's going to be fantastic because it's going to take that whole hybrid feel and make it real.
Yeah. And I'm super excited to start to see that come to fruition more in the future. Hybrid had always been a topic of conversation, but frankly, the virtual platforms weren't really at a stage that they would be able to capture the engagement necessary for the virtual attendees in a hybrid experience. And now we're there. So we're certainly ready for that.
It is spectacular, the evolution of the technology over the last 12 months. That you're right. Tom and I have been doing this kind of work for 7 years now, and we were limited in technology at the start, and anything we were able to pull off was great. What's available now is phenomenal. Tom, I don't know about you, but I really want to do an event on Accel Events.
I totally want to do an event.
Let's make it happen.
Let's make that happen. So speaking of Accel Events, as we kind of close this out, what has it been like to be the leader of a company that's gone from 15 people to 85 people in 10 months? That is, 5x growth is a lot of growth, and having to manage remote workers and build a culture and serve clients in the way that you're doing it. What have been some of the positives and the bumpy parts for you?
Yeah, so I'll start on the positive side of things. We have been so fortunate in that the team that we've built, they just have so much personality and culture, and they let that shine. If we were try to implement that sort of scale in an in-person environment, frankly, it would have been easier. Everyone gets to know each other a little bit easier. But in a virtual world, it's harder to let those personalities shine. It's a lot easier to hide behind technology. And the people that we have, they just welcome everybody. And as we grow and scale and new people join the team, that personality shines from everybody on the team. So we've been very fortunate there. And that also translates into the way that we interact with our customers. Customer support has to be number one in the event space. People spend 3 months building an event that accumulates in 3 hours. They don't have even 10 minutes to wait for a response. They need a response immediately. And that's something we prioritize. Our median response time is 44 seconds. So,
whoa.
Yeah, so that's been really one of the most exciting aspects of watching the company grow, that I'm also the most proud of. As for some of the challenges we've faced, well, there's always hurdles with technology, and there's been quite a bit of innovation in the technology space. And whether it be one of the largest hosting providers in the world having an outage, or anything in between that, a browser update, something like that, those are always challenges that are going to be faced. And again, there's not the luxury of time in the event world. So everything has to move in real time. And that means that we always have to be on our toes.
Awesome. So I don't know if we lost Eliz's voice on that for a second there, but John, thank you so much for coming and joining us here on the Webinar Talk Show. If people want to find Accel Events, how do they do that?
Yeah, so there's a couple places you can find us. Accelevents.com is an easy one, but check us out on LinkedIn and also Facebook. We have a group called Event Talk, which is it's not specific to Accel Events. It's an opportunity for event professionals and event organizers to come together and bounce ideas around about how to use event technology and how to facilitate engagement through platforms and through technology to make the most experiential event that they possibly can. So I would highly suggest that everybody checks that out as well. That's an Event Talk and found on our Facebook page.
On Facebook. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John, for being here with us. And thank you to everybody who tuned in and watched this episode of the Webinar Talk Show. We have done about 70 of these interviews since the pandemic began, and there's a whole library of them that you can find on the Facebook page, which is at webinartalkshow.live.
Yes.
And you can find out more information about how to hire Eliz and I if you go to webinartalkshow.com.
Indeed. And we will be back next week on Monday and Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time, continuing to talk about how to communicate your value. We'll have Lois Kramer on Monday, expert in positioning in the marketplace. And then Tom, Beth Z, our nerdy best friend, is coming. One of my favorite people. So both of them, actually. So we're excited about them.
Next week will be great. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Check out the Webinar Talk Show and tell all your friends. Thanks for being here. And John, thanks again.
Everybody have a great day. We'll see you next week.